Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're looking from, for our webinar where we will talk about updates from the Galapagos whale shark project. And with that, I would like, give me a second. I have an interference. I hear myself double, Jonathan. Do you? Is the... I think
I can hear some interference, but maybe if you...
Give me a second. I know where it's coming from. Moment.
Okay. Can anyone who is listening or online...
No, the issue is that I was trying to check if we're online everywhere, and to the fact that I see us online means that it didn't work. The only thing I need to get online for now is Instagram, so maybe give us one more minute before you start, Jonathan, and I will introduce you as well. Okay, that didn't work.
Thanks, Tom.
So Instagram is not reacting yet, so give me one more moment.
Go on YouTube. Thanks.
See, Kate is missing in the call and suddenly everything goes to hell. So YouTube, there we go. Slowly Instagram is coming. And Instagram should be live now as well. So I will double check that in just a second, but with further ado, I would like to introduce Jonathan. Jonathan is the leader of the Galapagos whale shark project. He's leading the project, he founded the project, and I would give it directly to you, Jonathan, to tell us a little bit more. We won't go very much in detail about the start of the project, because many of you that are watching today are people that traveled with us or know already about the project. This webinar today is more for giving you an update. What is happening right now? What are our goals? What is happening in the project? And with that, thank you, Jonathan, for joining us today.
Okay, thanks very much. Hello to everyone from different places around the world. We even had a question about Australia. It's 3 a.m. right now, so they said, will there be a recording? So yes, there will be. But we do have folks from all over the place joining us. What I would like to do right now is give a very abridged summary of what's been happening, I would say, in the last probably 4 years. Don't worry, it'll be a very quick update, because most of you have traveled with us before. Many of you have been with us online, watched the seminars, the webinars, the presentations and stuff. So you know all the details of the project, the history. And so I'm not going to talk anything about that today, but really talk a little bit about what's been happening and some of the developments and where we're headed in the future. So I'd like to go over quickly to a presentation and let me know if this does come online, because I think that is a lot easier to watch. So just very quickly, the update right now, June 2024. It's difficult to know exactly where to start, because we had this massive hiatus due to COVID, due to a number of global realities that made some of the work difficult, not just for us, but also for our colleagues. Some of the whale shark team, as you know, are coming from as far away as Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, obviously, as well. So things became rather complicated. Now, I want to start off with probably some really good news. Now, as you know, one of the goals of the Galapagos Whale Shark Project is to study the whale shark's movements, not just locally and around Galapagos, but also regionally, to have a better Okay, let me check. We think that we might have lost connection here. Let me do a quick... No, I think we're back online. Is that correct? Okay, so sorry about that. We had a local internet system apparently went offline, which happens when we get strong storms coming in, although there don't appear to be any right now. So where was I? Good news. So as you know, that we're looking at movements of whale sharks, and we're trying to use that information to understand how we can direct management or legislation. So if you've got a whale shark traveling in national waters of a particular country, you talk to that nation. And this is what happened with the countries of Ecuador and Costa Rica. For a number of years now, we've been aware of this migratory corridor, this swimway, if you like, which is incredibly important for a huge number of species, not just whale sharks. Other shark species are traveling up and down, so hammerheads, silky sharks, Galapagos sharks, a lot of the rays, the manta rays, for example, some of the smaller rays, turtles, marine mammals heading up and down this area, so humpback whales, dolphins of different species. So it is a very, very important area, migratory corridor, if you like, for many species. So for a number of years, conversations were going on between Ecuador and Costa Rica, but nothing concrete was actually happening. Until the amount of data, the sheer volume of data from a number of different organizations, wasn't just the Galapagos Whale Shark Project, it was a whole series of teams working out there that are looking at different species. But the data from one of our whale sharks, who of course you might remember was called Coco, swam directly from the Galapagos. She was tagged on the 14th of August in 2020, and on the 5th of September she arrived up in Cocos Island. And with that kind of information, which there's no way that you can disregard or deny that. You have absolute proof that this is a direct connection between the two areas. At that point, the governments of Ecuador and Costa Rica got together, and they declared that this new reserve was going to be formed because of the importance to so many migratory species. And we do now have this new reserve, which was announced and then declared in January of 2022 as a result of the COP26 meetings. So this kind of came after the hiatus of COVID. About 60,000 square kilometers in total are protected waters between the national waters of Costa Rica and the national waters of Ecuador. So this marine corridor comprises, I've just mentioned, of about 60,000 square kilometers, of which 30,000 square kilometers are no-take whatsoever. You're not allowed to fish absolutely anything in those waters using any kind of fishing techniques whatsoever. Another 30,000 are no longlining, and as you probably know, the main danger for a lot of wildlife, not just sharks, because you've got sea lions, you've got turtles, you've got rays that fall into the long lines themselves. So another 30,000 square kilometers is a no longline area. So very, very good news indeed. For both of our nations, for the area of the Eastern Tropical Pacific, but it's a small step in the right direction. We now have somewhere between 4 and 5% of our oceans are really protected. And of that 5%, not all of them are patrolled. So you might have protection, but do you have enforcement? So that's the next question. What we're looking at, of course, is fishing activity in this area. Some of you may be aware of the Global Fishing Watch organization. They do an amazing job of collecting and collating all this information, data about all of the vessels worldwide that are carrying out any kind of fishing whatsoever. And this is all this information is put on a map. So to show you the problem or the challenges up which we are against, I downloaded this a few minutes ago. So the red, orange, yellow areas are hot spots of fishing, and you can just about make out the coast of South America there. I don't know, can you see my cursor? That's the coast of South America coming up into Central America. You can see coastal Ecuador, Peru there, Galapagos Islands out here. So the area of the Galapagos Islands and the marine corridor, interestingly, most of the marine corridor, there's a small area here which is still being fished, but a lot of those areas are not being fished. But immediately outside the protected areas, the marine reserves, the fishing pressures are absolutely massive. They're monstrous. This is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and these are some of them are long distance fishing fleets which are being resupplied at sea, which is actually illegal to do so on the high seas. But again, the problem comes with enforcement. And I clicked on an area just to the west of Galapagos and the Galapagos Marine Reserve, and what pops up? 3 vessels. You can see very clearly there the names of those vessels, the nationality, the flag, all 3 Ecuadorian in this particular case, and their fishing technique is drifting longline. So even though we're making good steps towards protecting a particular area or greater areas of the oceans, the high seas, those unprotected areas are being fished very, very intensely, not sustainably. And as you know, of course, most of the species that live in and around the Galapagos Islands, the oceanic species, most of them are highly migratory. So they're moving out of the protected areas and straight into the arms of the fishing fleets that are waiting out there. One of the main problems is that it has been legal to fish sharks in Ecuador from the coastal areas and around Galapagos as well, supposedly outside the marine reserve, but we know it's happening inside the marine reserve as well, because the decree, presidential decree, allows the incidental taking of sharks, and if you accidentally fish a shark, then you can actually commercialize it. Therein lies the problem. Are the fishermen then actually, are they avoiding trying to take sharks, or are they specifically targeting sharks with their long lines? Evidence would suggest that the fishing is huge of sharks. It's very much a directed fishery. Long lining is going on in and around Ecuadorian waters all the time. And sharks are also being smuggled down through Peru to the south. And from Peru, the fins are flown out to Asia for the shark fin market out there. And the meat is sold mostly locally. So CITES, of course, the protection of endangered species has decided to make a halt on Ecuador's shark trade, banning all shark products to be exported from Ecuador, which is great news. This is just broken, literally. This is just coming out onto to world news now. So this is excellent news. However, it still means that there needs to be enforcement. But it's every single one of these measures makes it just a little more difficult to export shark products or any endangered species from these areas. So we're making small steps in the right direction. So I think that that's something which is worth celebrating. Obviously, we can't just sit back and be content with where we are right now, but we are making steps forward, and data from projects like the Galapagos Whale Shark Project is being used immediately in the management and in legislation and in creation of protected areas. So I think that's great, a great way to sort of look at the global situation right now. Otherwise, we've made a lot of progress over the last 4 years. We have a number of papers that have been coming out. So even though we might not be constantly out in the field, we are constantly gathering data. We're analyzing that data. And this particular paper, which was published in the Biodiversity Data Journal, was led by Sophia Green, and she was the lead on that particular paper. We have a number of other papers that are also in the pipeline at the moment that all the members of the team and our colleagues are working on, and this is definitely a collaborative activity. So a lot of the data, although you might not immediately see it, it is actually being published in peer review, and as much as possible we try to make all of that information and those papers available. Although last year, sadly, when we were not able to get out into the field to study the northern aggregations, so we didn't head up to Darwin for the first time in over a decade due to mainly funding challenges. We were not able to get up to Darwin, so we took the decision, which was a tough one, considering it was a Nino year, so it was sort of a critical year that we wanted to really gather data to see how whale sharks might change their movements during a warming period of El Nino. So unfortunately, we decided, though, that it was better to hold off to combine our resources and get the entire team back together again in 2024. So 2023, we didn't do the northern expedition. However, we did the a new southern expedition over the last probably 5 to 10 years, there have been sightings of whale sharks off the south of Isabella, the southwest of Fernandina, Floriana, and those waters. And we've been very So enlisting the use of a small ultralight airplane, an expedition went out over a number of days, led by Sophia, but with members, of course, from the national park, from Miramar. The whole team went out there in order to see if they could actually find the whale sharks, because it's a much bigger challenge when you're looking over a huge expanse of ocean. So they were scanning perhaps 100 square kilometers, and so they needed an ultralight in order to be able to do that and to spot from the air. And then they knew that they couldn't jump in with tanks because the whale sharks are simply swimming by. Okay, if any viewing out there, confirm whether you can see us. I have us online, according to my. Okay, right now I have. It's showing me that we have connectivity again. Yep, tells me it's online. Can any of our viewers confirm if you can see us? Sorry about this. Okay, we believe we're back online. Sorry about this. We seem to be experiencing some technical issues with internet. Not altogether surprising, as we're actually recording this or talking to you from a fairly remote area. So hopefully you can hear what's happening right now. Apparently we went offline when I was talking about the southern aggregation. So the challenges of looking at the southern aggregation, of course, it's an open ocean aggregation, so they're not really together, but they're spread out over a huge area of ocean. And the only way that we've been able to really locate them was from the air. So with that in mind, we enlisted the help of a small foundation with a very good pilot who brought an ultralight to the Galapagos Islands, and they headed out to see if they could spot them from the air. Sophia, leading the expedition, went out with a team, and they were able to actually tag 5 whale sharks. The challenge there, of course, being that because you don't know exactly where they're going to be and they're simply swimming by, this whole procedure has to be carried out free diving. So that was carried out, and the interest there is to see whether or not they're then moving up into the Darwin area, and if it's the same individuals that we're seeing in the south as we see later on in subsequent months up in Wolf and Darwin. So the tagging was carried out, and a field report was written as a result of that. This was partially funded by the Explorers Club Rolex grant. So they provided some of the financing for this, as well as other funding sources, and they were able to get some interesting results. 4 of the tags reported back fairly rapidly. 1 unfortunately never reported back. We never got reports. We don't know why. It could be that the tag came off. It could be that associated species removed the tag itself. It could be for a number of reasons. It could be technological as well. So the tags sometimes just don't transmit, and we don't necessarily know why. We don't have any conclusive evidence yet to show whether or not these animals are moving up into Wolf and Darwin, but we do hope to continue with this work, so that little by little what we're doing is putting together pieces of the jigsaw so that we can have an overall idea of what the whale sharks within the Galapagos Marine Reserve are doing, whether it's a single group of animals in the entire marine reserve, or whether we have distinct groups which are traveling in different directions, which may be feeding in different areas, breeding in different areas. We don't know, but all of those things are absolutely vital if we are to be able to create management policy and legislation, as I mentioned earlier. Part of what we also try and do is talk to as many people as often as possible. This is why we do the webinars. This is why we do the presentations. Some of them are digital online like this, with the problems that we have with the internet. Some of them are very much physical. So in June of last year, Sophie and I traveled to the UK. We were invited by a couple of organizations, Galapagos Conservation Trust, and Craghoppers and SLG were the ones who invited us to go and give talks, not only to corporate businesses, but also in schools as well. And we were really, really privileged enough to be able to go into some schools in the Manchester area. They'd found schools in what were described as underprivileged areas. And if you look at the, the places that we were visiting, obviously, first world underprivileged areas are not the same, perhaps, as other areas, less developed. But we did have an enormous privilege of talking to school children in these areas, and the interest, the level of interest and excitement that we got from those groups was absolutely extraordinary. It was very, very inspirational to see how these young children, ages of about 9 to 12 or 13 more or less, were fascinated by the topic of the oceans and very, very concerned about the future of the oceans. And to see that in the young children, who are obviously the next generation, who will be stepping into a position of responsibility, who will have to take over the mess that we leave. There's no better way really of putting it. It was just fantastic to see that response. It was heartwarming to see that there was so much concern. How could they help? What could they do? Even though that these are children that are living in an inner city area, they felt a connection with the oceans, and they felt that it was their responsibility to in some way help or look, towards a better future for our oceans. So that was really fantastic. We also went in to a couple of corporate businesses as well, who have been associated with the Galapagos Whale Shark Project in some ways for a number of years, that have been helping sponsor us in different ways. So we thank you for your support with that. You might notice a new logo, for example, that we've had developed by SLG. So they're helping in a number of different ways, and to give us an open forum then to talk to to their heads of industry and to their employees, and to see how industry can also help with plastic pollution, with a change in consumer ideas. How can they make things more environmentally friendly? And so this is coming not only from conservation groups, this is also coming from industry as well. And I think that those two things hand in hand can lead to some very, very big steps as we move forward. So it's fantastic we're able to get out. And I think for a period of 8 to 10 days, we didn't stop talking for, I think, about 8 hours every single day. But it was fantastic to see the response that we got there, even from some fairly high-level corporate industry representatives. One of the factors that we've been discussing and looking at more recently is how can we integrate something which will bring the message home to those businesses. How are your industries affecting the oceans? How are whale sharks and the protection of whale sharks possibly affecting the future of our oceans as well? So blue carbon and the ocean carbon cycle is something which has really not been talked about a great deal in the past, but now more and more it's gathering speed, it's getting interest. And because of the carbon offset, which can be used extremely well, in some ways, so the replanting of forests and so on and so forth, but people are beginning to realize that the oceans play a much, much bigger role in the carbon absorption, even than all of the vegetation, combined vegetation of the forests of the entire world. Probably 2 to 3 times the amount of carbon is absorbed by the ocean each year than by all of the vegetation covering the land surface of our planet. So species like whale sharks that feed primarily on smaller invertebrates, phytoplankton, which in turn are feeding, zooplankton, which is feeding on phytoplankton. The phytoplankton are absorbing the CO2 for their development. The phytoplankton is being consumed by the zooplankton is being consumed by the whale sharks and other filter feeders. So all of these filter feeders are absolutely critical to that ecological balance and to the sequestering of carbon in the future. So bringing that message to industry, to children, to whoever, I mean, it doesn't matter who's out there, but bringing home that message that these animals are a very integral and important part of the health and the future of our oceans and planet, I think is a very important message indeed. So we're sort of integrating that into all of our presentations, discussions, and talks. Now, in 2018, some of you may remember that we had a massive breakthrough when the Okinawa team from Japan, the only team worldwide that have a professional ultrasound which is capable of being taken underwater, unattached to any cables, that allows us to then use ultrasound to try and determine the reproductive state of the whale sharks, the females that we're seeing up in Darwin. So we tried it in 2017 for the first time, no success. 2018, we had a huge breakthrough. Ironically, one of the ones that we were able to get viable images from was a male, but we also were able to see the reproductive organs of a female. We saw the ovaries, and in the ovaries, they found evidence of egg follicles. Now, whilst this is not direct evidence of pregnancy, it shows that they could be at a later stage during the same year pregnant, and it's possible that we do have pregnant sharks in Galapagos. Now, right now, our data set is 2, and I think you'll agree with me that that is not enough, of course, to make any kind of draw any kind of conclusions. So we want to continue that work. So the plan was in 2019 that the team from Okinawa, primarily Rui and Kiyomi, were going to come down, join us again, but unfortunately, life had other plans. The Okinawa research station had some damage from a fire. They were underfunded, so they were unable to join us. And then, of course, 2020, when we planned to come down again, everyone knows what happened then. So unfortunately, until this year, because we even planned to have the team join us last year, they were unable to travel on an international basis. And finally, Japan has opened its doors for international travel for science teams. And so 2024, very, very pleased to say that they will be joining us once again. A couple of images. This is what we're looking at. For us, as untrained people, viewers, we were unable to honestly identify the egg follicles, but Rio and Kiyomi, of course, are world-leading experts in this field, in the field of ultrasonography and of blood draw and chemical analysis of blood. And so they immediately looked at these images and said, yes, you can see here the egg follicles. So our hope is that if we can carry out ultrasonography again in the Galapagos, we will be able to determine if or not there are certain individuals that are carrying fetuses. And if they're carrying fetuses, are those fetuses large enough to be perhaps at term, and would that indicate that they're birthing in, around, or nearby the Galapagos Marine Reserve. So that is one of the main goals that we've been trying to work towards. But of course, COVID and a whole series of events, life in general, conspired that until 2024, in about a week or so, we won't be able to get back out of the field with the team to do that work. We're very excited. They will be joining us, so we will be continuing that work this year. We hope to take blood samples. As you know, we've been practicing this and taking blood samples in the past. And we just received, in fact, yesterday, I got an email from Dr. Rui, and he said we probably will have the transport permits from CITES in time, so that all of the blood samples that we have in cold storage in Quito, mainland Ecuador, of course, we will be able to then transport to Okinawa, to Japan, and together with those that we helped to collect this year, we will be able to do an overall analysis of all of the blood that we've been taking over the last sort of 3 to 4 years or so. So we're hoping that we'll get some more results from that. We'll keep you posted. We don't know exactly when we'll have those results. It certainly won't be before September, October, possibly November, but we will keep you posted as soon as we have any news on baseline health, on there's all sorts of chemical data which comes out, and really the moment that you get blood from an animal, it really does open up a lot of opportunities and possibilities as to what information we can determine and what that says about the whale sharks in Galapagos. Are they pregnant? Are they close to giving birth? But because this is groundbreaking work, you have to understand that nobody's done this successfully before. So as far as I know, we're the only team to have successfully carried out ultrasound of whale sharks in a free swimming environment. It's been done with animals in aquariums. It's been done with animals that have been caught in nets. But a shark that is simply swimming by, it's never been done successfully before. So this is groundbreaking, very exciting, but it does mean that we have to create our own data set in order to be able to understand what is happening. And so this is definitely work in progress. Many of you have seen this slide before. This is the blood draw equipment that we use. It's not highly sophisticated or anything very technical. 2 syringes connected by a stopcock, so you can open and close and direct the blood into different ones. It does have the extension tube on there, so that as the diver is swimming along with the whale shark, you'll be able to move around. You don't have to hold the needle absolutely in place the whole time. So that gives you a little bit of freedom to move around, but it does mean that as you're drawing blood into the syringe, the first blood drawn is contaminated with seawater. So although we can use that for certain types of analysis, we do need pure blood, of course, to look in more detail at the chemical, hormonal aspects of the blood itself. So that's what we'll be using once again. And I know that not all of you have seen this video. I'll play it very quickly. This is how a blood draw takes place. Sorry about the heavy breathing, but we can't eliminate that right now. So approaching the whale shark, she's very calm in the water. Her reaction to us is 0. She's also fairly high up in the water column, which means that we're at a safe level to carry out these activities. A very scientific technique. You find a white spot, more or less a tangent to the leading edge of the pectoral fin, and about equidistant from the main part of the body itself, and then you continuously try and keep the suction drawing through the first syringe. Nothing comes out at that stage. You don't know where the blood synapses necessarily are, so it's a bit of hit and miss. So there, choose a white spot next to the first one, put the needle in. That's the difficult part, getting the needle in, because they have to put this on top of skin around the animal kingdom. But as you can see, all of a sudden, you hit the sweet spot. Okay. Okay. All right, can you see me? Okay, so apparently you couldn't hear anything that I was saying over the bubbling and burbling. So what I was explaining there is that the technique is simply to swim towards a shark. If they don't have any kind of reaction, which you saw, there was zero reaction. You then go in, find a white spot, more or less equidistant between the main part of the body and the leading edge of the pectoral fin. Insert the needle. It's a 3-inch, 16 gauge, very, very tough needle, and then see if you hit a blood vessel. It's a little hit and miss, so we're aiming for an area that we think there'll be a concentration of blood vessels, or we may be just putting it into tissue, which is with a high blood concentration. We don't absolutely know, but as you can see, zero reaction whatsoever, and we're able to get a successful blood sample from the whale shark. The syringe, the main syringe itself, has an anticoagulant in there, so we don't have to rush to the surface and then back to the vessel. But as soon as we finish our dive, we then go back to the vessel and we centrifuge the blood sample. We also use an Abbott handheld analyzer that you can see there on the left-hand side of the screen, and that tells us, gives us information immediately about lactic acid levels, and that indicates whether the animal is stressed or not. That particular animal we had already tagged on a previous dive. When we looked at lactic acid levels, they were very, very low, which would suggest that the tagging of the animal had absolutely zero impact, and that is what we're trying to do, so that all of our techniques we're following or tracking as much as possible to make sure that we're not harming or even worrying or stressing the animal whatsoever. But that blood, of course, is so important because it gives us an insight into many, many different things. So as soon as we have any more data about that, we will let you know. So far, evidence has been inconclusive, again, because we don't have a baseline pregnant female that we know is pregnant in an aquarium or in a net which is caught. Sad state of affairs, perhaps. But if we knew that we had blood from a pregnant female proved to be pregnant, then we know exactly what level the hormones should be at. So obviously, little by little, we'll gather that kind of data. However, when we were successful with the ultrasound, it actually made world news. Now, you might have not seen it as a headline on your local news, but it went through apparently over 250 different newspapers, online and physical, and TV stations actually broadcast all of this news that scientists conduct first ever ultrasound scans on whale sharks in a major scientific breakthrough. So I think the scientific community was very interested. I think perhaps it didn't eclipse the football scores at the same time, but a certain level of the population or number of the population were interested. So we did make world news with that particular discovery and breakthrough. So I think we're on the right path, but we need to get back out into the field, spend more time out there carrying out ultrasound and blood tests to be able to discover whether or not these are pregnant females. And I love this particular headline: jetpacks and ultrasounds could reveal secrets of pregnant whale sharks. So it sounds like a combination of science with James Bond. Anyway, I'll leave that one right there. But it is exciting. And on a serious note, of course, that led to a first peer review publication, which is that underwater ultrasonography and blood sampling provide the first observations in reproductive biology of free-swimming whale sharks. So the work that we're doing is directed very, very specifically towards getting reaching certain goals, and reproductive state of these whale sharks, these females in Darwin, is so important. We need to understand where they're giving birth, where they're breeding, where they're feeding, all of those key aspects of a whale shark in order to be able to create management policy and legislation, and hopefully more marine protected areas. So I thought I'd add this because our Japanese team, I got an email yesterday said that they're checking all of their equipment, they're packing their bags, and they will very shortly be boarding their specialized custom plane and heading towards the Galapagos. And this is real. This is not made up. It doesn't belong to these guys. It was to celebrate World Oceans Day that Japanese Airlines decided to decorate one of their aeroplanes with a whale shark. And I think that's absolutely wonderful, because it does show that the outreach, the awareness of the public is increasing massively. But I thought, what a wonderful thing that Japanese Airlines did that. But anyway, so hopefully our team will be joining us very, very soon. Our goals for the June 24 Darwin Island expedition are, of course, the ultrasound to determine reproductive state, blood draw, so baseline health data, reproductive hormone chemistry, satellite tagging. We will be carrying 10 brand new Splash 342 dorsal mounted satellite tags to look at surface movement and, of course, diving behavior, because if we can understand where they're diving, why they're diving, how much they're diving, that gives us an idea of habitat usage. So how are they using the various different vertical levels of the ocean, not just how they're traveling through horizontally on the surface. And so that builds up a 3D framework or idea of how they're traveling through the oceans, because of whale sharks don't travel on a two-dimensional basis. And then photo ID, a very basic technique, but one which is giving us enormous returns, because we've already got hits, for example, as far away as the Socorro area, Revillagigedo in Mexico, that they have seen a whale shark resighted that was sighted also in the Galapagos Islands. So something as simple as taking a photograph of a whale shark. Jenny was talking about citizen science, how important that is, how anybody out there who's enjoying recreational diving can actually lend a hand to the scientists and bring back such important data. So two people who had no scientific training whatsoever, one up in Mexico, one down in Galapagos, that were able to take photographs that gave us a very important connection between those two areas. So that's the work that is planned for 2024. I could talk about so much more, because there's so much more going on in terms of outreach and education, what's happening on a local level, for example, with the Chicas con Agallas. So Sophie is together with a number of colleagues, leading a local girls group for young children that have never had any connection with the oceans. Some of them are even scared to go in the oceans. They're sort of between the ages of about 8 and 12, more or less. Some of them have never been swimming in the ocean. Believe it or not, they live in the Galapagos Islands. So all sorts of work which is going on to try and educate, not just on an international level or a national level, but on a local level as well, how important the oceans are for our enjoyment of life, for a healthy living way of life, but also how important they are for the future of our planet as well. So all of those things that are going on, and there's not time to talk about it today, because as I said, this will be a brief update, and I think I've already talked enough. So very shortly, hopefully next week, we'll be heading out again on our beautiful little fishing vessel. This is the Uelka 2, very dear to our hearts. She's not a big boat. I think we're 17 people, 16 or 17 people on this little fishing vessel, which when she's not fishing, the fishermen dedicate part of their life to preserving the very oceans that give them their livelihood. And I think that's a wonderful collaboration between the two sectors, conservation and the fishing sector. So only good can come from that. And hopefully soon we'll be back out in the Galapagos. And with that, I would ask if you have any immediate questions, because I know there are some out there. I hope that wasn't too long. Okay, I can't hear anything coming from you, Jenny. I've got 0 volume.
So now we are back. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, now I can hear you.
Sorry.
Did
Okay,
you
then
ask?
I would encourage you to rewrite your question. Apologies for all the issues, the technical issues that we had today. The internet today did not do us a favor. We were on and off. So a few questions that got asked, I think on Instagram it was, unfortunately got deleted. So if you can, please rewrite your question, and I will see that I can find the question that got asked. So the first question that got asked was, how have recent technological advancements or methods improved for the data collection and analysis?
Okay, it's a very good question, and one of the things that we're fighting with all the time is that technology doesn't meet our expectations. So we know that these whale sharks are diving down to enormous depths. We know that they're going beyond the crush depth of our tag, which is 2,000 meters, an enormous, I mean, huge depth. Why are they going 2 kilometers vertically down the ocean? We still don't have clear answers about that. It could be that they're escaping predators. That's one very viable possibility. We did get a tag back, and this is one of the challenges that we faced, and perhaps I'll talk more about that a little bit later. But one of our tags ended up on land. We were able to recuperate that tag because fishermen said that it was caught in one of their nets, which is possible. It's also possible that they caught the whale shark as well. We don't know. But anyway, they said that they just got the tag. We got it back, and with that, we were able to look at some very fine scale detail of the tag, and the dive that it did was absolutely extraordinary. I think we'll have a paper coming out about that soon, but it was world record breaking. So it made a very, very rapid dive down to almost 2,000 meters, stayed down 10 minutes, and then made a very rapid swim back up again. Why it's doing that, we don't know. But the technology that we have is not capable of diving as deep as the whale sharks. So this year, speaking with the engineers at Wildlife Computers, who are the main providers of the splash tags that we're using. And they said, yes, we can push the technology this year down to 2,500. So whilst it's not a huge increase, it might just give us that 10% or 20%, who knows what it is, 50% maybe, we don't know, of an increased buffer that allows us then to actually retrieve data as they do deeper dives. So our tags this year are rated for a deeper, a deeper crush depth, and we're hoping that will bring new insights. So little by little, what we're doing is we're working with the engineers. The trouble is that this is not a big commercial viability, doesn't have a big commercial viability. If we were buying 100 tags a year, they might be interested in developing something a little better. But our budget is for 10 tags a year, so whilst we have that, obviously we take the technology we have. But we are fine-tuning, tweaking, and I know that the Hitachi ultrasound unit that they're bringing out here has been tuned or fine-tuned by Hitachi to create a deeper, a better penetration depth, so that they're able to look deeper into the animal. And that was one of our challenges with the ultrasound, is that we couldn't see past that very, very big layer of fatty flesh that surrounds the whale shark. So we simply couldn't see deep enough into the whale sharks. So yes, we're using technology and all the best available technology, or at least what's available to us.
Thank you very much. I think there was another question, and you touched on it already a little bit. What are the main conservation challenges currently facing the whale shark population in the Galapagos?
Oof, that's a huge question, so I'll try and keep it very brief. Whilst the whale sharks and all of those other migratory species are in protected areas like the Galapagos Marine Reserve, like the Hermandad Marine Corridor, like the Cocos Marine Reserve, etc., they're protected. Pretty much. I mean, there are exceptions, but they're pretty much protected whilst they're in those areas. But they don't stay there. They swim out into the open ocean, and there is no regulation mechanism right now or authority that can enforce a regulation mechanism on the high seas. So we're looking at 95% of our oceans that are completely unprotected. So it's an absolute slaughter what is going on out there, and they're taking absolutely everything. It's indiscriminate, unreported, illegal, and uncontrolled fishing, which is going on in the high seas. How can you play a role in that? How can you make this stop or disappear, or at least slow down? be responsible when it comes to what you're eating, because if we continue to consume the products, shark fins in Asia, for example, so please don't go or frequent if one of your local restaurants serves shark fin or shark or endangered species on the menu, don't go there and tell them, I'm leaving because you have this on the menu. I've done that a number of times in different areas around the world. So, you can ask your local fishmonger or supermarket, how do you source your fish? Is it responsibly sourced? Because if we stop consuming, they'll stop fishing. So a lot of these things, it's driven by the consumer market. So what also is coming is that there is new legislation coming through bodies like the United Nations, for example, to put controls on this unregulated fishing. How they're going to do that, I still don't really fully understand, but legislation is in the pipeline to stop these very, very far-reaching long-distance fishing fleets. So fleets like, unfortunately, I don't want to point the finger, it's always in the same direction, but China does have a large responsibility in that, but it's not the only nation. Many other nations on the planet are fishing sharks, including my own country, the US. Spain has one of the largest shark fishing fleets in the Mediterranean and Atlantic areas as well. So there are a lot of nations involved with it, but there is legislation which is coming in to try and slow or possibly stop that for the future. However, we have a limited amount of time. So yeah, we're all responsible. I hope that to some extent answers the question.
Thank you very much. The next question is, did you hear about the birth tax and are you intending to use it?
I sort of guessed that question might be coming. And in fact, I don't know if I can just, how do I go down? I might have something here. Let me see. Can I go? Yes, I did. Yeah, here we go. The birth tag. I guessed I might get this question, so I did add a couple of slides. The birth alert tag, BAT for its short acronym, is something which has been developed recently, has created a lot of excitement amongst folks that are studying sharks, because it's a small tag that can be inserted in through the cloaca of the shark, and it's an interuterine tag which is inserted and placed alongside the embryos during development. So then the moment that the shark gives birth, obviously it gives birth to the sharks. It also gives birth to the tag. The tag then pops up and basically tells you where it is that the shark has given birth. So you know where you insert it, and then you know where it pops up, and that tells you that your pregnant shark has traveled this area, and that gives you insight into the birthing areas specifically. However, it's only been used, to my knowledge right now, on tiger sharks and hammerheads, and it's only been used with captive sharks. So the sharks are caught, they're immobilized, and can you imagine that you actually do need an applicator? When we discussed this, I mean, I don't want to go too much into the sort of the basic details of this, but we sort of looked at each other and said, okay, who has the longest arm? Because when you think about an animal the size of a whale shark, 12 to 14 meters long, weighing 20 to 25 tons, yeah, right now it's neither practical nor safe to consider that to be something which we can we can talk about. So I think if there are techniques or the technology is improved in the future, we might be able to use that for whale sharks. But right now, I think it's exclusively used on smaller shark species for some very, very obvious reasons. Great question. Oh, I lost your sound again.
There we go.
Yeah, gotcha.
The next question goes in the same direction. If we do have insights about the breeding behavior, if you can talk about that of whale sharks in the Galapagos.
Yeah, we really have still no data or very little data. What we suspect is that a percentage of the whale sharks coming through Galapagos are very likely to be pregnant. That's why we want to focus the work in that direction. It's possible we discover that they're not, but that in itself would be valuable data. We still don't know on a global scale, and we're in contact with all of the other groups that are studying whale sharks out there. It's a fairly small community of scientists Just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with some scientists which are heading out into the Indian Ocean. They're going to be doing some work out there, and they were asking about our tagging techniques. So anytime there's any news or updates, we share it very rapidly. And we still don't have any concrete data about where they're giving birth or even where they're breeding. Interestingly, last year we did see 2 whale sharks in the Galapagos that had scarring on the pectoral fin area, or what we think is possibly scarring, and that could be intraspecific when the male grabs the pectoral fin in its mouth. And this is something which we have seen with hammerheads, with white tips, with Galapagos sharks, and so on and so forth. So we know that the sharks are doing that. That's how they immobilize the female when the male then copulates with the female. So we know that that scarring could be an indicator of recent breeding, but they might have traveled 1,000 miles or 1,000 kilometers since the breeding. So short answer, unfortunately, we still don't have concrete information about where they're giving birth or where they're mating. Can't hear you again now. Can you hear me? Okay, turning my volume down. Does that help at all? Okay, I don't know what happened there. Are we offline? Okay, I've got us online with Starlink. It says we're online, so I don't know if it's the.
You keep going. There's no further questions.
Okay, I've got a bunch of questions here which I could answer. Oh, okay. Thank you, Bronson, and thank you, Tom. And Martin, okay. All right, so I see some questions. Martin, yes, is there only one science tour every year? We only have one dedicated science field trip a year, which is heading up to Wolf and Darwin, basically because it's a very, very costly undertaking. So we only have funding for that. Could we be doing more? Yes. Should we be doing more? Yes. But unfortunately, we don't have the funding to do that. So the information that we bring back, it is a 2-week dedicated expedition. But that is what has provided us with the information. And I think with the exception of year 1, we've only been able to carry out one single trip per year up to Wolf and Darwin. No, we did 2 one year as well, 2020. We did 2. So thank you. That's a good question. However, now with the southern aggregation, we're starting to do a trip to the south as well. So what we hope for next year is that we'll have one trip to the south and one trip up to the north. That's our goal for next year. Do you need help with any kind of data analysis and IT skills? Karsten, yes, we do. But I would put you in touch directly with Sophia, who is the principal data analyst, and she's the one that could most talk about how you could give us a hand with data analysis and IT skills. Sophie has surpassed myself quite some time ago in that ability, so I'd rather that the two of you talk. But yes, we do need help with data analysis. But I'm not sure exactly how. As I say, if you can contact us and give us an email or a WhatsApp, be very, very happy to put you in direct contact with Sophia. Jean, is AI able to help you analyze the data you collect, or is that just a future possibility? To be absolutely honest, I don't know. I suspect that yes, there is an ability. And again, I suspect that Sophia is already using that. As she is crunching through some of the data. What we're working on, and I use the term we in a very generous way, some of our team are working on how to combine data from all of the data collected in the Eastern Tropical Pacific, in fact, no, global data, to look at vessel strikes, primarily plastic pollution and whale shark movements. And collating all of that data, they're able to identify the areas within that have high marine traffic that we hope in the future we'll be able to suggest that vessels change their course, probably not by very much, because as you know, time and fuel are costly. And when you talk about that with corporate industry, with businesses and so on, they're not really willing to listen. So if we can find some fine tuning as to how people can avoid areas of very, very high whale shark activity and density, then we're using already, I think, AI to crunch that kind of data. But that's been something which has been going on for at least 2 years now. But that paper is almost ready to be published. And once it is, then we can go to the marine sector and say, hey guys, how can you help? Or even go to the governments and say, how can you enforce changes within your particular areas? So interesting. Those are the questions that I have directly. I don't know if there's anything else which has come up or come to mind. As I say, we've got this the trip going out in June very shortly. I think we head out to Galapagos in a week's time, and there will be updates following very, very shortly on all of the media that we can keep up with, because that's one of our problems, is that we're not able to keep up with sort of all the media and everything. We should be publishing a lot more than we are, but we will be doing some posts on Facebook and on Instagram, possibly by Twitter and all of those things, which I don't understand. But we will be reaching out and letting you know what the immediate results of the June trip are. And I think we've been going on for 1 hour. As Jenny said, sincere apologies. I know that this is recorded, so I don't know if it's there'll be any better quality in that, but we are technologically challenged given the very remote area that we're currently transmitting from. Anyway, thanks very much for joining us today, and I hope that we bump into many of you very shortly physically as we're traveling to different destinations and out in the Galapagos. And I know that some of you will be joining us very shortly for some of the Galapagos shark diving trips in the Galapagos as well, and hopefully an amazing experience with whale sharks. Thank you.